And I think this is important for business owners, depending upon what your situation is. I told myself, I'm not taking a job for 3 years. So this is going to work. And I was in a financial place to do that. Some people who go out and bootstrap, they got to make it happen quickly. But if you can, and you really are committed and you believe in what you're offering the marketplace, you got to give yourself that time.
What's your process for holding your team accountable without creating resentment, maybe?
I like to run a weekly success sort of meeting as well. But I also, I'm a big believer in one-on-ones on top of that. I do a one-on-one with each key team member every week. Accountability, recognition, and removing barriers. Having that dedicated time, we have that time on the calendar where they know they have access to me.
So what's your secret to spotting someone who will thrive in a small growing business? Welcome to Built to Scale, the podcast where vision meets action. I'm your host, Quinn Vincent Shills, founder of Master Roofing, and I'm here to pull back the curtain on building world-class teams, scaling companies, and turning bold ideas into unstoppable momentum. Let's get to work. Rick English has spent over 20 years climbing the corporate ladder, COO, CFO, even CEO, before walking into launching it all from UP Advisors, a company on a mission to help businesses grow up healthy. Rick has seen the inside of thriving companies and the absolute worst of train wrecks. He's built a career on turning chaos into structure, stress into systems, and shaky startups into sustainable growth stories. In this episode, we're going to pull back the curtain on Rick's exact playbook, how he made the leap from executive to entrepreneur, the scrappy moves that landed him his first clients, and how he built his team and scaled his systems. The biggest money wins, the hardest failures, and how he's using AI and ChatGPT to stay ahead of the curve. If you're a young entrepreneur trying to figure out how to build something that's going to last, not just something to make some quick money, but actually create a healthy, scalable business, this episode is packed with step-by-step roadmap of what you're going to need. Let's dive in with Rick English, founder of UP Advisors, UP Advisors, on Built to Scale. Welcome, Rick.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's awesome to have you. So what's the scariest part of walking away from being a CEO, and how did you overcome it?
Well, probably the money, quite frankly. I was making really good money, and I just got to the point where I didn't love it anymore. And So yeah, you go from making a lot of money to just a true startup. Quite frankly, and the other part of it was I was in California when I was running the business, and then during COVID, I actually moved here and ran it for a year, and then left. And so not only was I starting a new business, but I was starting a business in an area where I didn't know anybody really. Just knew a few people through church and that sort of thing, but I had no connections in the business community whatsoever. So.
What was the company that you were actually acting as CEO for before you moved on and started your consulting business?
Yeah, it's called Proco Insurance Services. So we're an insurance brokerage firm. We're $23 million in revenue, 5 offices, 90 employees around the Bay Area.
So was there like a moment, a client, or an event that gave you the confidence to actually leave and launch UP Advisors?
Yeah, it's actually UP Advisors. Yeah,
UP Advisors. Okay.
The inspiration really probably took place 3 or 4 years before I actually launched. I was a big fan of the show The Profit. If you've ever heard of it on CNBC.
I haven't.
So Marcus Lemonis, who's the chairman and CEO of Camping World,
okay,
he had a show on CNBC where he would go in, or people would write in, and then they tell him their business problems and why they needed him to come in, invest in it, and fix it. And so then the whole show, each show was about these business owners who were struggling, and he'd come in, diagnose what's going on, and then he would write a check to make an investment and simply shake their hand.
Gotcha.
And to see if they were willing to go forward. And so that was kind of my inspiration. It's like, I know I could do that. I'm not going to write the checks. which actually has proven to be a really smart move, unless you're going to be really, really crazy selective. But that was kind of the inspiration. And then I just got to the point where, I'd had a lot of success in business, and I wanted to make that jump to go and help business owners. And my wife really wanted to move out of California. So it was just kind of all those things came together. I was just done with the corporate thing. And, the collection of those things came together in January of 2020. And we ended up moving. And I ended up working for another year because of COVID. But then in 21, it's like, time to go. Got to go do this.
Where did you guys end up?
We're in Meridian, Idaho. So
nice.
Most people know Boise. So basically it's adjacent to Boise. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people like moving out there. It seems like it's maybe a slower pace of life, and you get all the 4 seasons, and not the same taxes probably, right? And it's a little bit different out there.
Yeah, it's definitely different. The pace is definitely different. The Bay Area was it was go, go, go all the time. And moving here, even things as simple as like the email, when you send an email and you get a response in 2 days, and instead of somebody calling you 5 minutes later, did you get my email? Well, you just sent it 5 minutes ago, kind of thing. So yeah, it was definitely an adjustment.
Gotcha. Do you like it out there more?
Yeah, it's been good. We like the 4 seasons. People are great. The business community is great too. Just, the ability to get out and network and meet people, and people are very welcoming. And we've really enjoyed the move. I'm originally from Seattle, so I wasn't a Californian, but I experienced California for like 9 years. So.
Yeah, I grew up here, born and raised, and it's like when I go other places, I'm like, it's so different, Like if you're like in California, Miami, or New York, it's like the big city, everything's going on. Then you go to like Texas, or you go to Idaho and these other places, and it's a totally different pace of life. Yeah. What did your family and like closest circle say when you told them you're leaving the C-suite and gonna start over?
Yeah, well, my wife was super supportive. I think she just believed in me and believed. And really wanted to move to Idaho. Some of my other family was a little skeptical. I remember my uncle actually was talking to him, and he's like, you sure you should do this? Like, are you sure you can do it? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. I wouldn't do it if I wasn't sure. But yeah, there was definitely some skepticism. I think my dad, he's always just been a believer in me, and he's always been super supportive. I'm sure he was quietly skeptical. What are you doing, kind of thing, because he worked for the same place. He worked for the county, and he worked there for 34 years. So the notion of just going out and starting something just not necessarily what he would have done. So, yeah.
When you look back, like, was there something you wish you had prepared for before you made the leap?
I think the one thing that I would probably do differently is I would have become more of a student of sales in advance. I'm definitely a student of sales now, and I've learned a ton, and I've gotten good at it, but I really can't, like, I hadn't sold anything other than maybe like mowing lawns when I was a kid. I didn't have to sell in my career. And so, that was probably the biggest thing. Is I had this conversation with myself, Rick, you're starting a consulting business, and you're going to be a consultant and a coach, but the business isn't just going to walk through the door or come online. People aren't just going to go to your website and all that. You got to go sell. So, how are you going to do that? And so I I did some prep certainly before I launched, but I would have spent a lot more time learning sales and probably marketing before I launched.
I love that you brought that up. There's a lot of people that have business ideas and they want to go and do it, but it's a great idea, but if you can't get revenue to come in and you can't get sales to happen, it's not really a business, right? So
exactly.
A lot of people, I think, especially if you're younger, like it's a great thing to learn that skill because it opens the door to so many things. It's not just a salesman, you're going to sell cars. No, it's if you want to open your own business, if you want to sell a product, a service, anything, you need to have that skill set in order to produce money to fund the company and grow it. What's the scrappiest thing you did, to land your first client?
Well, I was pretty fortunate to get my first client, first two clients really. They were referrals from business partners I had down in California because I was a minority owner in the company, and they were just family members of theirs. But really, the networking piece for my first client here in Idaho that
Hmm.
wasn't a referral, it was just really getting out and meeting a ton of people. And I had never really networked. I mean, there was one time when I was looking for a different job. I'd gone to a networking event for kind of job seekers and that sort of thing. But outside of that, I'd not networked either. So you go walk in. So I started with the Chamber of Commerce here, and they do a First Friday.
Okay.
So this business had opened up, and I had no idea what I was walking into,
Mm.
other than there was just going to be a bunch of people there. So I walk in. It's a kind of a nutrition place, like nutritional food place.
Okay.
You get like waffles and smoothies and teas and that sort of stuff that
Sure.
all have protein and stuff in them. And I walk in and this place is full. There's like 45, 50 people in a place that probably should hold about 20. And now I'm like,
Wow.
well, the initial response is, well, maybe I should just go home, And like, no, Rick, you're in sales, dude. You got to get out and start selling. And so it's just I had to learn just to be able to walk up to people and start a conversation and say, hey, my name is Rick, and I've met you before. And that would just ended up being there was a huge flywheel around networking. I always use this as my object lesson. This is a chunk of the business cards that I picked up over my networking time. And, that was it. It's just, I wasn't going to be doing ads necessarily at that stage or a bunch of other outreach. It was just all get out and meet a lot of people. And I picked up my first client. Actually, my first client in Idaho ultimately introduced me to Rich, probably like 9 months after I started working with the guy locally. So, yeah.
What do you do with Rich Summers?
Well, Rich originally, I was introduced to him to be kind of do executive coaching, so just advising him on how to scale his business. And
Mm.
then when we ended up talking, this was like I got introduced like November of 22. He was just not too long away, like less than a week away from having somebody come in to help him implement EOS. And I'm like, well, I ran EOS in my last company. I'm not an official EOS implementer, but I can certainly help you with that, and we could probably save you a little bit of money. And he said, well, basically he said, well, if you want to do it, you just need to come down. He goes, do you want to do it for me? And that's when we started talking about the money piece, because I wasn't thinking I was going to take that over. I was just going to advise him. He said, well, do you want to do it? I had said, hey, yeah, I implemented it. And he's like, but you want to do it for me? And I said,
Hmm.
when? And he's like, well, Wednesday. And this was a Friday. So
Oh,
I
wow.
was thinking, oh man, do I really want to cancel all my appointments and go down there?
Back to California.
Yeah, so San Diego, and so yeah, I did. It was one of the best decisions I made, because there's been so many connections that have come from that relationship. Just
Sure.
cascading down, people that have referred me as a result of working with Rich. Rich is people learned about me through one of his masterminds or being on his podcast or whatever. So yeah, yeah,
It's interesting you bring up EOS. For someone who doesn't know, it's like the Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman, right?
yep, yeah.
And so it's we read the book, me and my leadership team, in the beginning of the year, and I've gone through like two different like director of operations, like, and we're still like creating the VTO and like defining it, and it's like we haven't been able to really fully create our rocks and implement it and have those level 10 meetings properly in the quarterlies and annual and all that. So, I mean, how do you come in and make it like best practice into a business that's struggling to implement?
Yeah, it starts with just the commitment to the process. So you have to be committed to, and particularly if you're busy, if you've got a lot going on. And Rich and his team, they had a lot going on when we started working together. In fact, one of the people, there was one of the team members when I went down that first time. It was her first week, and everybody else that there was a lot that was new, and there was a lot going on. And so you have to have initially just the commitment to do it, and the commitment to that, we're going to take the time, even though it's going to hurt a little bit, even though it may push back something that we're working on. And then you've got to commit to the weekly. If you're not willing to commit to the weekly, I just say don't do it. Don't do it. I've got clients that I work with where I encourage those weekly meetings. I structure them a little bit differently than EOS. There's some other components to it, but some people, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. But the insights that you gain, the accountability that you gain, the ability to resolve issues promptly, to identify them quickly and resolve them quickly is super helpful. And it does truly enable you to scale. Is it right for everybody? No. I don't think that implementing EOS and the various components of it, that all businesses are necessarily ready for it. So part of that is, one, you got to be committed. Two, you got to be ready. If you're ready and you're committed, you will definitely see results from putting it in place. But
what do you think is like the time when a business is ready? Is it like at a certain revenue point, you'd say, or a certain team size?
I think it's a lot more mindset than it is size, because, I have clients that range from, pre-revenue startup to, 30 employees. And, a pre-revenue startup could just as easily implement it, or implement elements of it. One of the reasons that I'm not an EOS implementer is I don't want to be beholden to one system. So for some people, it may make a ton of sense for you to implement what I call a weekly success meeting, or what they call an L10 meeting. That may be absolutely essential for you as a small business that's looking to scale. So being able to establish objectives and have a scorecard, but some of the other elements you may not implement all of those. You may not go through the whole vision process right now. We may just get clarity on your vision. So I think that I think it's a lot about mindset and a lot about that time commitment. And just willingness to invest, and less about size. If you talk to EOS implementers, most of them that I've talked to, they're not gonna work with any company that's under 10 people. So they would say you need to have 10 people. I mean, I think the thing about EOS too is there's parts that are missing in EOS from a true business operating system.
What parts?
One of the big holes is the financial side. If you read through the book and you look at the whole cycle of implementation, there is a data component, but that's the scorecard. So, how you structure your financials, financial reporting, all that sort of stuff, there's really, other than setting objectives, there's nothing there. And I think there's a big miss on that. I'm not sure, quite frankly, why. I mean, never talked to Gino Wickman, but that piece is definitely missing. I also think the sales piece, there's a little bit of marketing, but sales and marketing element, there's a lot of opportunity there as well. There's some components like what are your 3 uniques, what is your what and your why, those sort of things. But I think the sales and marketing piece is
it gives you maybe kind of like the shell, but you need to break in, and if you really want to build a successful business, there's a lot of other steps that need to be implemented. If somebody was to consult with you, that you would implement into the business on top of that first layer. So was there a time when you thought, like when you were starting the business, that like this isn't going to work, and what pulled you through?
Still coming up.
And I think this is important for business owners, depending upon what your situation is. I told myself, I'm not taking a job for 3 years. So this is going to work. And I was in a financial place to do that. Some people who go out and bootstrap, I mean, they got to make it happen quickly. But if you can, and you really are committed and you believe in what you're offering the marketplace, you got to give yourself that time.
SoCal homeowners, why pay $15,000, $20,000, or even $30,000 for a new roof when instead you can get a new roof for only less than $100 per month? Here at Master Roofing, we serve homeowners with high quality roofs with no hefty upfront costs. So give your house the roof it deserves with zero down and low monthly payments. Why wait? Click the link below to get you a roof you deserve for payments you can afford.
I don't know that there was a time where I didn't think it was going to work. I think the hardest thing is you don't necessarily know how quickly it's going to take off and how much, I was fortunate. I had my first client actually before I launched because of a referral. And my second client came that next month. But I mean, I wasn't making crazy amounts of money at that point. I wasn't making enough to fund my expenses. So if I had any doubts, it was just more about like, how long is this going to take? But I told myself, and I think this is important for business owners, depending upon what your situation is, I told myself, I'm not taking a job for 3 years. So this is going to work. And I was in a financial place to do that. Some people who go out and bootstrap, I mean, they got to make it happen quickly. But if you can, and you really are committed and you believe in what you're offering the marketplace, you got to give yourself that time. So I think that helped, but there were definitely questions because I didn't get my first client here. I got a guy, my first 3 clients were out of state. One was a friend that we had some conversations with, and his business was in trouble. But I didn't get my first client here until like late February, and I officially kind of went out in the marketplace in December. I launched at the end of October, but I really got out, started networking. So, it was a few months, and I was like, okay, well, is this what's it going to take? And then, then you start to see kind of the flywheel effect really start going, and you get confidence. But yeah, there was definitely some doubts as far as how long it was going to take to get the money and get the clients.
So like, how did you decide who was going to be your first hire, like admin, sales, operations, or something else?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was admin. I talked to my clients about time value exchange. So in what I call a deep dive, it's the first paid step in the process that I take clients through. One of the questions I ask is, what is an hour of your time worth? Not what do you pay yourself, but what is the value of an hour of your time? What value can you create? And so I have some business owners, a minimum of 150. I have some people tell me it's 5,000. Some people say 500. And so when I look at that, and in my business, I have some flat fee, I have some hourly. I mean, mine, it's fairly easy to define. If I'm billing out at my hourly rate, and yet I'm spending time invoicing, or I'm spending time scheduling, and I'm spending time on emails that aren't high value, I need to make a trade. And so for me, that was an admin person. The first person I hired was an admin person, and just having that person who was in my email every morning, handling my scheduling. We invoice on a weekly basis. It's kind of just a unique thing that we do. I hate invoicing. And so I had built a system, and I taught my assistant how to do it. They took it over. I just review certain things, and that was a huge lever up for me as the assistant.
Do you hate it because it's just like monotonous? It's just like like a robot, like a person can do it.
Totally.
So why am I wasting my time clicking
exactly.
and typing a number in?
Yeah, it's $20, $25 an hour time. If I was using a VA, it might be $5 an hour time.
Right.
But and so it just doesn't. It's monotonous.
So how do you price your offers with clients? Is it like an hourly billable rate? Do you do like a retainer? Do you have a package? Like, what do you charge?
Yeah. So I have a couple. I'm actually in the midst. In fact, I'm looking at on my other screen here has my this webinar that I've built, but or the funnel page, just because I was working on it earlier. But so I have what I call custom consulting, which would be some of the EOS sort of stuff, but really just, where I'm implementing some of that, but also just taking clients, digging in, doing a discovery call, then doing what I call a deep dive, where we look at people, process, product, profit, customer experience, really identify, get to know the business really well, dig into the financials, dig into all those buckets, and then figure out what their issues are, what their opportunities are, and then just prioritize action. So that's this custom sort of consulting. And so I currently charge $267 an hour, and the deep dive costs $1,500. So I don't do too many engagements where I don't do the deep dive. If they just want a strategy call, I'll do a strategy call. But any sort of ongoing engagements, we're doing the deep dive. If you don't want to do the deep dive, that's fine. But then if you want ongoing work, then probably not best for us to work together, because I just want to know the business well enough that I can really consult and coach effectively. So that's the custom side. On the Business Freedom Mastery side, which is the program that I built, it's much more structured, and it's all centered around helping business owners either be free to be out of their business, for the most part, not completely, but have their finger on the pulse still, or just be free to focus on what they enjoy most in the business. And that's $98.50 for 6 months. So that's more of just a standard offer, and there's a community element to that, and then there's also a one-on-one element as well.
So when so one option is, joining the group, and you have already kind of laid out like, hey, what do all these businesses have problems with? And,
Yep.
and you kind of have like a general like way to walk a business owner through how to stop wearing all the hats, and how to start delegating and build out all those systems, processes, and I assume, right? And the other option is more of like a one-on-one consulting, where you pay an hourly rate, and you'll even fly out sometimes to the client to figure it out.
Yeah, if they're willing to pay, I mean, it ends up costing more if I got to fly out, but you're going to pay travel expenses and all that. But yeah, Rich happens to be one of those guys. He's an in-person sort of guy, which is why he's got all the people working in the office and all that. That's how he likes to roll. Where most of my clients, because I've got clients all over the country, most of my clients run Zoom.
He's doing a good thing. He's on a yacht every weekend, right? So.
No, it works, and that's one of the things with business owners is that, if you have to have that room for your personal style and what works for you. Now, if the business fails or is failing, then you got to make adjustments. But if you can accomplish what you want to accomplish in the way that you want to, then, I mean, that's one of the reasons we all start businesses, right?
Yeah. No, and I mean, I'm curious to hear your take on it, but I think it is very important to have building an in-person team, like building a team virtually. Like, obviously companies do it and it's done all the time now, but I think there's something to be said about like having more control, more accountability. And like, I think you can scale quicker and better if you can have a place for your team to meet on a daily basis and get their work done in person.
Yeah, I think that's largely true. Certainly there are examples like GitHub and 1,000 employees and no office, but I think the ability to grow a company like that is in that fashion. Takes a unique skill set and really, really good selection process. You need to spend more time picking the right people, because you have to have people that you can count on to really work when nobody's watching.
So what's your secret to spotting someone who will thrive in a small growing business?
Well, one of the things that I've started to ask over the last 6 months, and encouraging clients, because I get asked for help with interviewing and just questions all the time, is I like to ask about their story. What was their growing up story? It's not something historically that I necessarily asked, but when I had an epiphany probably 18 months or so ago, as I was talking to clients, and I remember there was one situation where it was probably after a series of conversations with clients whose employees were ungrateful. And one of the things I really look for is gratitude. And, in the current culture, there's a lot of me, it's about me, which is fine. We got to take care of ourselves, but when you're growing a team, there's got to be a good mix of me and we. And if it's all me, that's a problem. And typically we find that those people who are all me, they're not super grateful that they have a job. They're not grateful to be part of a team. They're not grateful for the fact that, somebody has taken the risk, as we talked about earlier, to go start a business. And so really hiring for gratitude and digging in to figure out, is this person an entitled person or is this person a grateful person?
So when you're hearing them tell their life story, you're listening for
Yeah.
what's their perspective on life? Are
Yeah.
they showing
Yeah.
gratitude through
Yeah.
through that story, or is it kind of like
Yeah.
everything bad happens to me, and then you see a pattern, and there's red flags and green flags you're looking at?
Still coming up.
What's your process for holding your team accountable without creating resentment, maybe?
I, like to run a weekly success sort of meeting as well. But I also, I'm a big believer in one-on-ones on top of that. I do a one-on-one with each key team member every week. Accountability, recognition, and removing barriers. Having that dedicated time, we have that time on the calendar where they know they have access to me. Yeah, or was everything handed to them? And it's like, that's just kind of the way it's expected to be? Or are they super grateful for the fact that their grandfather or grandmother invested in them, or their mom and dad gave them this opportunity that they wouldn't have thought of, or some entrepreneur gave them an opportunity, and as a result, they are where they are now. Looking for that. So it's both the growing up story and then also just the career story. What do those stories tell us about this person? And we certainly go a lot deeper. There's certain interview questions I like to ask. I like to use pre-employment assessments. In fact, a guy in my network here who's also my financial advisor, he's like hiring an office professional, as he calls them. And I said, hey, what's it worth to you to hire the right person? I said, is it $5,000? Is it $10,000? Because you can spend $400 and you can get on your top 2 candidates total, and you're going to get the insights that you don't have right now to help you make a decision. So
where would one do that?
So there's some pre-employment assessment. There's a ton of them out there. I have one that I like for kind of, office professionals, think admins, customer service folks, account manager type folks. There's a bunch of different sources for it. The lady I use is out of Edmonds, Washington. She runs a company called Winridge Consulting, and she's an expert in the Winslow assessment, which is the one that I was recommending to him. There's also one out there called the Trimetrics. It's got a variety of different levels of it, but I like to use that for more sales and leadership roles. It just gives you this depth of understanding that, you're just not going to get from an interview. And a lot of people like to hire with their gut, and some people have a really good gut. But I like to use my gut and have a deeper understanding of what's this person made of. And
when you're hiring for like a key position, will you take like more time, to really find the right person, or are you rushing to fill that space?
yeah, I think for me, I want to take the time, but not be slow.
Okay.
So, I have a defined process that I like to go through, and that when clients ask me, or we're talking about when that's an issue for them, that we'll put in place, I'll help them put in place. But for me, I like to stick to the process, but the practical reality is, depending upon the economic environment and or who you're hiring for, you can't always go slow, because your competitor might be interviewing that same person, and if they're going faster, they may get them. So I like to follow my process, but I'm willing to accelerate it when I need to make sure that I have a chance to get that ideal candidate.
Have you ever kept someone like too long out of loyalty, and what did it cost you?
I had my daughter working for me for a period of time as my assistant, my initial assistant. I probably kept her a little longer, only because she was going through this program, and I was okay with making that sacrifice. But generally speaking, historically in my career, I learned early on that you got to make adjustments quickly. Some people say slow to hire, quick to fire. I think that's a pretty good maxim, but I don't mean slow as in like slow so you miss candidates, but thoughtful in that hiring process. Do the due diligence. And then when you figure out, it'd be great if we were 100% right. Even with all the tools and the questions, you're never going to be 100% right. But when you figure out that it's not the right person, you got to cut the cord quick and go find the right person.
What's the biggest difference between like leading as a CEO and leading as a founder?
Yeah. Well, the biggest difference is as a founder that it's yours. And in my case, at least, is it's yours. Whereas before I was running somebody else's business. And so as a founder, you have complete control and decision making. When you're a CEO, depending upon the structure, if you didn't found the business and you don't own it, or you're maybe a minority owner, you have a board, or you have some a facsimile of a board or something like that you're reporting to. So you don't really have that 100% control.
What's your process for holding your team accountable without creating resentment, maybe?
Yeah. So I like to run a weekly success sort of meeting as well. But I also I'm a big believer in one-on-ones on top of that. So I do a one-on-one with each key team member every week. When I was a CEO, I did the same thing. Had certain folks, and for me, it's about both accountability, but it's really three things: accountability, recognition, and removing barriers. So having that dedicated time, the call, if it's a call or the in-person meeting, that may be, a couple of minutes one week, and it may be 30 minutes the next week, but we have that time on the calendar where they know they have access to me, and they know we're gonna go through a series of agenda items to make sure that where the tasks are being completed that we agreed on, anything new, any barriers that they're struggling with that I'm going to help them tear down. And we're going to be clear on what the action items are going into that next week.
So what's the very first process you built that freed up your time?
The very first process I built was the discovery call. So for me, when I started, I was doing what I called a business health checkup. And so I would offer this free business health checkup, and I'd go meet with people in person, and we'd spend an hour together. And I was just basically getting to know their business. And so, as part of my market, that was part of my marketing tools, is I'd meet people, I'd tell people in networking groups that I was in that, hey, I'm trying to do 20 of these over the next 30 days. So when people know you have a goal, and they like you, they'll want to help you hit that goal. So it was consuming a lot of time because I, go drive somewhere and then I'd spend an hour. Sometimes it ended up being more than an hour because you're in person. So I basically eliminated that as quickly as I could and moved to a discovery call where I'm spending 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes on a Zoom call and getting basically the same outcome, but saving myself an hour with every prospect, which in the early stages, that was huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you know when it's time to invest in technology versus like adding another person?
Yeah. I really started with, trying to leverage as much technology as possible. But so I would say it's probably been there from the beginning for me. I had the advantage though of, not being 23 years old or 24 years old and starting a business without necessarily a lot of background. And so I was trying to leverage as much technology as possible from the beginning. But
Mm-hmm.
now with AI, it's like, you know, I look at this all the time because I'm looking at all my clients. I'm typically serving with my custom consulting 30 to 35 clients at a time. So I'm in
Wow.
people's businesses all the time, every day. And so we're looking for different ways to leverage. And so that I end up just taking all those situations. I look at it's just kind of this continual application for me now. But early on, I looked, I remember I was looking for different solutions. So I have a proposal solution that I have that's a program. I was originally doing like an Excel spreadsheet, and I ended up getting introduced to this guy who built something called the Smart Pricing Table. It's a proposal tool. It's really kind of perfect for what I do, and so just really leveraging that. But there was like 8 different pieces of software, SaaS software, and I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't want to have 8 different types of software. So I ended up signing up for Zoho. I don't know if you ever heard of Zoho.
No, what is it?
Zoho is it can be used at the enterprise level, so for big companies, but it also can be used low. It had, and I kind of learned a lesson in this, but it had the ability to do booking, so like a Calendly type. It has a Calendly feature. It has a proposal feature. It has an e-signature feature. It actually has accounting built in. It has a CRM, so the full lead to proposal to account process, and there's 24 other features that it has. So I was like, well, this is better. I'd rather have a couple of different softwares and one that does a lot. But what I learned from that is it was good. It was okay at a lot of things and not really great at anything. And so I've ended up morphing. I still use it, but I've ended up morphing to some other platforms, like High Level is what I'm using for my core CRM now, and also doing the funnel and that sort of stuff. But yeah,
a lot of people say good things about Go High Level. I've had like some marketing companies implement it before for like different lead sources coming in and stuff. But I think there's how do you like working with Go High Level?
It's been good so far. I mean, it's fairly technical on the back end. It can do a lot. And I think it's unlike Zoho, where it can do a lot. I think it does a fair number of things well, where I feel like Zoho does. I don't think Zoho does. Zoho does invoicing pretty well, but some of the other stuff just not so great. But yeah, it's been really good, and it's super capable.
It sounds like it's like sometimes better, instead of having like one software that kind of generalizes and does everything, it's maybe better to have like specialty softwares for their specific use type.
Yep.
So how do you personally measure whether a business is healthy enough to scale?
For my own business or for any business?
I guess when you're consulting a business, like how do you kind of size it up to see that it's healthy enough to start to scale?
Yeah, I look at those. For me, it's those 5 buckets. It's one thing that has been super consistent for me. And the reason that I, quite frankly, work across industries is because if they have a strong right-hand person in the business, is one of the key indicators of whether or not you're going to be able to successfully scale beyond what, depending upon, because I meet business owners at all different places. There are some people I meet where, they're going to be able to scale maybe another $500,000 or maybe another $3 million. They may cap out at 800 or $1 million, but they're not going past that. In fact, I was on a call this morning where the guy's like, yeah, I really want to get to $1 million. And I said, well, you know what? It's been 5 years and you're not there. And the reason for it is you. Because I'm super candid, right? But that's understood up front. And he's not had an assistant. And kind of to your question earlier, he's got to get this solved. And so we were strategizing and putting plan in place for him to execute on this tomorrow to really start making that transition. He's also got to have that strong right hand kind of admin person for him. He's got a guy out in the field, but that guy is burdened all day doing work. So,
what industry?
Huh?
What industry?
Let's just call him a subcontractor. I'm pretty careful about some of these because if somebody knows out there, I don't want to. Sure. I don't want to read it. But yeah, it's a subcontractor. He's a subcontractor, and
it sounded like construction.
Yeah, I mean, in the not he's not actually in construction, but he serves the construction industry.
I understand.
But yeah, and he's super coachable. But he's not going to get there until we free him up and we have this right hand person in place and we got a good admin. He will not scale much beyond where he's at. And so it's really, it starts for me with that people piece in most businesses. There's some where if it's true technology and we can really just leverage technology, then we gotta leverage that. But it's rare that there isn't a need to have a core right hand person. And then the financial piece. Do they have capital? Do they either have the capital? Do they have access to capital? And if they don't, again, it's going to be a whole different process of scaling. Even if you have the right people, if you can't access money, it's going to be a challenge. In this day and age, if you have a good business, unless your credit is just terrible, and there's nobody that wants to invest in you, you should be able to get access to money. But that's the kind of the second thing for me is the money side.
When you say money, like what level of capital are you like talking about?
It's somewhat customized to the business, but I would say enough capital where you can, if you don't have that right hand person, we can go get them, and you're not going to fire them because you haven't achieved the growth goals that you have in a month or
I
two.
hear
So
So you don't need millions of capital or anything like that. You're just talking about like you need to understand the value of paying somebody a salary to help take some of these things off your plate so you can focus on growing it.
Yeah. And so for some that could be 50,000, some that could be 100, some it might be 150, it might be $500,000. It just depends on where the business is today and then where they want to get to in their next phase of growth.
What's the revenue level or I guess what revenue level felt like the first real breakthrough for Up Advisors?
My personal revenue?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, I set what ended up being a really low goal the first year. And I think my first year was probably the breakthrough for me just because, I didn't know what to expect. I quite frankly hadn't gone out and studied even if I did, I'm not sure I would have gotten great information. But really that first year, I hit 220% of my first year goal. And in that same time, I had a guy that I met with locally that somebody had introduced me to, and he says, and I didn't even ask him. He just volunteered. He's like, you can't run a coaching and consulting business here in the Valley and generate more than $60,000 of revenue. I'm like,
sounds like a low target.
That's what I was at. I was just like, what are we talking about? And I knew what I had done that first. Throughout my first year, and I was like, this guy's out of his mind. And he moved to Utah, actually. So he actually believed what he was saying. But yeah, I just really that first year, just getting out and generating, for me, the goal is like 75,000 the first year because I really didn't know what I could achieve and so yeah, being able to blow that out of the water and then continue to grow. And now for me, it's just adding to the team is what's going to enable me to scale further from where I am right now.
When did you first pay yourself a real salary and how did that feel?
Well, I paid myself a real salary when I made an S election. But I have to think back. I think it was probably, I started taking some distributions so I launched technically like end of October when I kind of blasted on LinkedIn, hey, I'm in business. But really, so that was of 2021. So probably midway through 22 is when I first kind of took a distribution. And then it wasn't until that following year that I actually was paying myself through like payroll because I had to. But yeah, so probably about mid-year. So that would have been, you call it 8 months 8 months in.
How do you personally like differentiate or think about profit versus growth when scaling?
That's a good question. It depends a little bit on the industry. Um, I think it's a lot about pace of growth. So if
Hmm.
I'm working with somebody who really wants to scale quickly, um, we may be investing in people that are that investment's going to be overshadowing our revenue. So we're going to see lower profit or maybe even negative, losses. Not too dissimilar to like in the tech space. But generally speaking, I want the business owner to be really clear that if they operate this business appropriately, that they're going to be able to achieve some minimum margin. And so we're going to grow this thing quickly, and we may compromise our margins for a time, but we need to know that as we scale, that we're going to be able to continually improve that margin up to whatever a realistic number is or percentage is for that particular industry.
For like a service based business like roofing, where would you want to see like that net profit? Like what at what percentage do you think
Yeah,
is healthy?
yeah, I would say typically want to see that, you know, depends on growth, but probably 15 to, just depends, maybe as high as 20, but probably 15% is what I'd be looking at.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
20% is the goal.
Yeah.
I think it's but you have to price you're not going to be so competitively priced all the time
Exactly. Yeah.
if you want to achieve that.
Yeah.
Um, have you ever lost money on a client?
Um, Due to the nature of how I bill and all that, I wouldn't say that I've lost money. There have been clients where um, I probably did more than I should have without billing them, but I kind of learned that pretty quickly. I don't
What did you learn from that?
just that being compassionate. Um, if I encounter somebody in the community who just is in a bad way, I don't consider them a client. There's many people I've helped out for free because I've identified they're in a tough spot. That's one thing. So being compassionate and community oriented and giving back, that's one thing. But for clients who can afford to pay, there's no reason for them to not pay. And so the way that I probably lost money actually is just my price point early on was too low. I didn't. I was did some testing, but I've adjusted my prices multiple times. So that's probably where I undervalued my knowledge and my ability early on. So I probably gave up that way. There's others where I felt like I'm like, oh, I'm not going to charge them for this, or this took longer than I thought, even though I didn't commit to a certain timeline. So I'm going to give them a break. That's really where I probably gave back, but I wouldn't say I've ever lost money. I lost, I lost value, the value exchange, and so didn't make as much as I could have.
It makes sense. I was watching a video yesterday where it's like somebody said sometimes when you're starting your business, you want to paint red flags green,
Yeah,
and you start to see like these expectations or things from a client that you could probably see that earlier on of like, hey,
yeah,
this is gonna probably get a lot worse as this relationship grows, but we take the client and try and do everything we can to make it work to turn
yeah,
that first deal. It kind of reminded me of that. It's like I think as you start to build a business and have more clients, it's sometimes better to say, hey, I don't think this is going to be the right fit and
right,
move on instead of somebody kind of taking advantage of you and the time that you put in. And
right,
sometimes it happens.
yeah.
What's the hardest client situation you ever faced and how did you turn it around?
Oh, there've been some good ones. I I had a client that I'd done an enormous amount of work for, and it was just a really unique situation. client out of Florida, and it really morphed into me doing so much beyond the scope of what I really wanted to offer. But I ultimately, I guess probably didn't, maybe not the best example, except for the fact I ended up firing the client. Normally people don't want to fire clients, but it just got to the point where, and this has not happened. I mean, it's only happened really once or twice where I just said, hey, you know what? This isn't meant to be for us. And it's not meant to be for you running your business. But they really needed to do some things from a marketing perspective and just would not take the advice. And it was absolutely killing their business. And I just can't get behind that. And I finally got to the point where I said, you know what? You want to go this direction, it's just going to kill your business more. And you know that you need, I've told you repeatedly, you need to go here. So you need a different voice. And I cut off they were my number one client.
Wow.
Literally it paid me tens of thousands of dollars. And I just walked away. So best decision I ever made in the business, actually.
So the bottom line is, if you have a consultant and you're not listening to the consultant, then it's going to be very hard because he can't help you much except consult.
Exactly.
I get it. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
What's one business idea you tried and that flopped completely?
I just didn't market it probably well enough that maybe it would actually work. It was called the business within a business accelerator. I did have a couple of people take me up on it, but I didn't put the time and effort behind the marketing to make it happen. I think I may revive it at some point in time. We'll see. I don't know if the price point's going to make sense, but it was all oriented toward people who are like in sales and they're operating a business within a business. Think like a real estate agent or real estate broker, that sort of thing. So,
what would you say to a young guy out there that's starting a business or young girl? Like how do you recover when a strategy you believed in fails?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it's just understanding. What I like to say is that the path to business growth and to success as business is paved with both successes and failures. Everything's not going to work, and so just learn from it and then move on to the next thing. Don't cry. Don't sit there and cry about it. If you got to cry, get it over with and move on to the next thing. So,
what's next for Rick English and Up Advisors, and how big are you aiming?
Yeah, I'd like to, my goal is the next goal is, generate 5 million in revenue and really press in hard with this business freedom mastery program. And get a lot of folks on the program where they're getting the freedom that they need to be focused on what they do best and want most in life and business.
Awesome. Where can people find you, follow your journey, or invest alongside you?
Yeah, they can follow me certainly on LinkedIn. They can reach me at renglish at My Up Advisors. And they can certainly text me if they want, 208-565-6099. I like to give out my number.
Awesome. Thank you, Rick. That was powerful. I appreciate you pulling back the curtain, sharing your real journey, the wins, losses, mindset, and strategy. These are the kind of conversations that move people forward, and I know this one's going to stick with our audience. Thanks for tuning in to Built to Scale. If you got value from today's episode, do me a quick favor, subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone building something great. Your support helps the show grow and makes it easier for me to bring on even bigger names and incredible guests like Rick here, so thank you. Follow me, Quinn Vincent, on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok for daily behind-the-scenes insights and momentum to fuel your journey. Until next time, keep building, keep believing, and remember, legacy isn't given, it's built.